Well, it wasn't long ago, just a few weeks, that Leafs Nation was asking, what will Kyle Dubas do? What moves will he make? Well, Justin Bourne, the dust has now settled, and I think it's fair to say he made a lot of moves, some small ones, some big ones, some that got a lot of attention, like TJ Brody. He addressed the back end, but I think the move that seemed to spark conversation all across the NHL is the addition of Joe Thornton. Now, you wrote a great article on just how he'll fit into the Maple Leafs lineup. We'll get to that in just a few moments, but first I ask you, now that you've kind of had some time to think about it and sleep on it, just how big of an impact will Thornton have on this team, and just what's the biggest thing that his addition will change to the Leafs lineup on or off the ice?
I just think he helps their team in so many different subtle ways, and not even looking just at the pure hockey side of things, but just how it affects everything else. So first off, it affects their roster in a positive way because it gives someone like Alex Kerfoot a chance to be better. I think it probably moves him to wing a little bit more often, where he looked really good for the Leafs in the past. So instantly, I think you get a better player in Kerfoot. I think with the salary cap structure, who are you going to get to play in your bottom six at center for less than $1 million that was going to be better than Joe Thornton? So he fits with their salary cap structure pretty well. And then just in terms of intangibles, what he brings to this group off the ice. And I know people don't like to talk about intangibles these days, but they're real, and it can make a difference. I think just to show this Leafs core, it's nothing is promised. Nothing is guaranteed that you're going to win a Stanley Cup because you're a great player. He can just be a reminder that every shot at the cup has to be, valued, cherished, and taken seriously. So I think he provides a little bit of context for the rest of the guys on the roster.
Now we'll get into intangibles, the often discussed intangibles in just a few moments. People love to say that they matter. Some people say they don't. We'll take a deeper dive in a little bit. But you talked about the bottom six and kind of the depth chart. It's fun for every hockey fan or media person to look at the depth chart of a team, especially one like the Leafs, where they have so much firepower, where they have guys like Spezza and Thornton kind of penciled in the bottom six, to go, well, where do you fit these guys? Where does a guy like Joe Thornton fit? Yes, he's making league minimum, but you've got to think he's got some jam. Like, would you love to see him with Austin Matthews? You want to see him with a real shooter, some power play time. Where does he fit? Where do you think Sheldon Keefe, a guy that you're obviously very familiar with, give Thornton that first opportunity?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first opportunity probably comes, on the third line at center alongside someone like Simmons and VC, somewhere just to see what he's looking like this year. I think you'll get the sense in the first little bit is how much is left in the tank. And if it looks like there's some pop, and let's be real, if you're Joe Thornton, this would be exciting, right? Like, this would be a lot of fun with all that talent around him. So if he looks like he's got some pop, I wouldn't be surprised to see him late in the game taking some shifts with the big boys, sliding into on the first power play unit when there were some injuries. But yeah, I think he'd start on that second unit. But the great part about that bottom six is even the guys that are supposed to provide jam, a guy like Wayne Simmons, he can finish around the net. Maybe he'll play with Spezza. That guy can finish. There's a lot of guys in that lower half of the lineup who would benefit from playing with a disher like Thornton. So yeah, they've got a lot of options, but I see him starting as 3C and power play 2.
And obviously he's a natural center, and that's where, he's played most of his career, and that's where most people have him penciled in. But if you wanted to play him up higher in the lineup, back, I remember watching in San Jose, him and Joe Pavelski always seemed to flip wing center depending on the position, the strong side, who they wanted to go up against. And is it fair to say that he's a guy that, if he really wanted to move him up in the lineup to play wing, he'd be more than capable of accomplishing that?
Yeah, and this is the issue that I think you run into with some older guys is like, you'll put them in that spot and it'll look really good, but maybe Joe Thornton can't play 18 minutes a night. And so you have to say, okay, we know he can do that, but for how long? And you don't want to stretch him out and get less from him the next night. So you kind of have to be smart with his minutes. To me, what the Leafs wanted out of their bottom six that they weren't getting before is just some guys who can play the other team to neutral. You like the odds of that top six taking on any other top six in the league and at least hanging, if not beating them. So you just hope that bottom six can at least play to neutral. And if Thornton's not providing a ton of offense, he's pretty good at slowing that game down, playing in the offensive end, hanging on to the puck. He can just do so many things. So yeah, I can see him with the big dogs, but I can also see him just, kind of handling things on the bottom six with the top guys that are put in a position to succeed.
So let's get into intangibles. Like I mentioned, they often talked about intangibles. It's talked about so much in Leafland because we've seen them burn out in the first round. And people say, well, they need more leadership. They need someone to mentor the young guys. And they brought guys in. They brought in Kyle Clifford. They brought in Jake Muzz and now Wayne Simmons. And those are all great leaders. But does a guy like Joe Thornton, and I ask you because you've been in a professional hockey locker room, you know what it's like compared to a lot of us who maybe haven't experienced that. Does a guy like Joe Thornton coming in, does he have more ability to look at a guy like Austin Matthews or a star player and get his point across? Just give us what his level of fame and notoriety around the league does as far as leadership and intangibles.
Well, it's really hard if you're not a good player, even if you're famous. If you're not playing well, it's hard to say anything to a guy who's a great player. So for starters, Joe has to be contributing on the ice. He has to be someone who's, who's a part of the fight, so to speak, and not just a coach from inside the locker room. So that's going to be step one. But I have to imagine, new to the locker room, there won't be a lot of, he won't be telling anyone anything specific in the early going, kind of feeling out the room. The biggest thing for me is just, one thing Dubas has done this offseason with a guy like Thornton, who's desperate for a Stanley Cup, is, surround that core with hockey obsessives. These guys who are passionate about it. They drafted Nick Robertson. That was one of the reasons. They traded for Joey Anderson. That was one of the reasons. And I really feel like they want that core, including guys like Matthews and Nylander, to see guys like Joe Thornton who've been around for 23 seasons, who've done it all but win, and still see them putting in the work. And just goes to show no one gets to have a day off. It all matters. It's all about, that whole being a good pro thing. It's a real thing. And I think surrounding that valuable, talented core with more guys like Thornton and Spezza, and Simmons too. I think it goes a long way to getting the most out of your other players as well.
Well, Justin, it seems like for the last couple of years, we've heard rumors, Joe Thornton to Toronto, finish his career as a Maple Leaf, want to come home and play. Well, here it is. It actually happened. We're talking about it. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch this next season when it does get up and started.
I'm looking forward to it, man. Can't wait for whenever it may be.
One day soon, hopefully. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.